Adam, it's time to thank some people who are on our side because we're on their side. You found a new tool, software, BlueRithm commissioning software.
Robert, I sure have. I think BlueRithm is what I've been looking for all these years. Building commissioning can be chaos at the best of times. Most projects I consult on really suffer from poor information management. It's 2019, yet the property and construction industry seems to be firmly stuck in the 20th century paperwork world. I think people mistake emails and PDFs and Microsoft files on their servers and all the different PCs as a digital solution. In reality, it's just unorganized chaos. Do you want to streamline your commissioning process and save time and money? Do you want to go paperless and increase efficiency? BlueRithm is a cloud-based software solution built specifically for building commissioning professionals. BlueRithm digitizes your custom forms and checklists, allows collaboration across project teams, and automates reporting, leaving you to focus on what matters. Their team help you onboard the test sheets you've developed over the years. You can even send it to them in paper, and they will digitize that and put it in the BlueRithm system for you. In my opinion, BlueRithm pays for itself in time saved on paperwork on a single project. For a demo or to start a free trial, go to BlueRithm.com. That's where rhythm is spelled RITHM, like algorithm. BlueRithm.com. Tell them the Edifice Complex sent you there.
In a world where high-performance, zero-defect buildings are hard to find, two men are on a mission to disrupt the status quo. Welcome to the Edifice Complex, the property design and development podcast. Let your hosts Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean keep you up with who is innovating and doing great work, perspective on the adjacent possible, and challenges to the status quo.
Welcome to the Edifice Complex. I'm Robert Bean, your co-host and unofficial mediator. Here again with my colleague, official agitator, heavy emphasis on agitator, friend and Yoda of most everything to do with buildings, Mr. Adam Muggleton. Say hello, sir, Yoda.
Hello there. I'm looking forward to this. This is about one of my pet things, one of the many things that get me going. So this should be interesting.
It will be. So today's guest plays in the world of commissioning. It's a favorite subject for Adam and one that taunts him every hour of the day. It's why he looks the way he looks. It's an area that I continually shake my head at, as it certainly is an underappreciated element within the world of engineering and construction. Our guest today has a Master of Science in Software Engineering, Bachelor of Science in Applied Management, and Associate of Science degree in Electrical Construction. His score sheet includes 10 years working with Johnson Controls before founding BlueRithm Commissioning Management Software, where he remains today as its owner and president. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thank you, gentlemen. Happy to be here.
So, Andy Martins, our listener want a synopsis of how and why you entered the industry and then ultimately taking an exit from one of the world's largest control companies to start up your own software business. How'd that happen?
Well, I kind of fell into the building construction industry in general early on in my career. It's really where I started. I came in at the ground level, learned about building systems, building technology, and just the process of building and designing a building kind of from the ground up. Moved on to some bigger and better things, started working for Johnson Controls, like you said, about a decade or so ago. I got involved in some big projects, NFL stadiums, mission critical stuff, hospitals, data centers, and just spent a lot of time working with all the different parties that get involved in a construction project like that. Okay,
interesting. So I'd want to zero in, before we talk about BlueRithm, what was Johnson Controls like? So for me, Johnson's, or these big firms like Johnson, Siemens, they're not systems houses. They're just massive, like in vogue Poland type companies, right? So what was that like, being a small thing in a big machine?
Sure, that's a good question. To a large extent, you are a bit of a cog in a giant machine. To a certain extent, at least while I was there was a lot of decentralization with the local markets. So we had a lot of autonomy to sort of develop and manage and run our projects the way that we saw fit. And Johnson Controls also does a lot of other things besides just develop the products. They do, design, consulting, services, construction management. They do a whole bunch of things. So I really got to be involved in various projects, all stages of a project, from early design and development phase all the way through, commissioning and turnover to the owner, and then even beyond that. So it kind of depends on where you're at in the company and how you look at things. And there's a lot of pros and there's a lot of cons to working in a big company like that. But overall, I think I had a pretty good experience.
I mean, the Johnson's Honeywell rivalry fascinates me, and the Siemens, actually. Those are the big three for me. Siemens, Honeywell, Johnson's, and they all sort of have their ups and downs, right? So when I was a property developer at that phase of my career, I went through a phase of I would rather shoot myself than have Johnson's on a job. and then 5 years later, that flipped round. They came out with a new product. But the thing that really used to get me going was, I worked out that what I was going to get on a project was only as good as the technicians they were going to send me and the office that was servicing me, right?
Right.
You're actually, whilst you got that name, the Johnson's, Honeywell, Siemens, it all comes down to the 3 or 4 guys that come on site and how good or bad they are, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. There were some locations around the U.S. at least that really struggled on a consistent basis. And then we had just a rock star team here in Minneapolis. And it was a pleasure working with most of the folks I did for that time.
Yeah. You know what? It's interesting, gentlemen. I often take my students through an exercise, and I get them to go back early on in their careers. And then I get them to look at what happens in 5-year increments. So for me, I'm an old guy, right? So I'm going on 40 years I've been in the business, right? So I go back into the 70s, starts 1979, 1980, come up in 5-year increments. And then I look back in my career and I think about all the changes that went on. And that, Andy, is why I came down off of the high technology ladder, because once we've been up to the high tech, all the early introductions of wireless controls, software, all that kinds of stuff, when you were someone like myself, it became parasitic on our profit. And it didn't matter. And just to give you a little bit of background for the listener. So I ended up selling my company to Danfoss in Denmark back in 2000. And they're over in Europe, of course, a big control company. They compete with Siemens and all the other guys, right? So I know a little bit about controls. So I want to know, Andy, well, the whole continuum of technology, how did that bite you, and where do you stand on it today? Because you must have been bit by it sooner or later. I mean, it had to happen to you.
Yeah. So I've been involved with a lot more than just what we all think of as building controls, building automation systems. Even with my time at JCI, I've got a little bit of background with some Cisco networking stuff, and then obviously I've got the software engineering degree, and I have a software company now. So, but really, I think what fascinates me about it is I've really always just had a passion for making things more efficient and making things easier and more fluid and just better, whether it's just a process or a team or a company. That's just something that's always came naturally to me and something I've always strived for with wherever I'm at.
Yeah.
And that's really what drove my passion for the building systems, automating things that we can free up people to do other more productive things. And then that's obviously the goal of most software systems like BlueRithm. Right. Automate as much of the administrative stuff as we can, let people focus on the things that they're good at and where they add value. So that's always just been a mindset of mine.
We're going to come back to BlueRithm, but what I guess I want to get out of you on or answer the question is, how do you respond to today's building owners or the contractors that are having to service or install or manage these systems about change? The way companies, and they all do it, they're always changing their stuff. How do you deal with that change? Because I know in the past, I don't know about you, Adam, but I would get incredibly frustrated by manufacturers changing stuff, and even when they had something that worked, they wanted to mess around with it, right? So how do you address that? So let's just say I'm a building owner today, and you're going to come in. And let's just say you're still working for a control company. We're going to come back to BlueRithm. You're sitting across the table, and you're going to try and sell me a multi-million-dollar control systems. I'm going to go, how long is this good for? What's your answer? 5 years?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, right? So none of us are going to be able to stop change. There's always going to be new innovation and stuff, and there's always going to be companies and individuals that are pushing the latest changes, and they have to market them to somebody and find some early adopters. So I guess we have to decide if we're a building owner, if we're going to take that additional risk that goes into adopting some of these earlier innovations that are earlier in the life cycle. Maybe there's a lot of benefit for us if we're not terribly risk averse and willing to accept some of that. That could work out very well for us. If we have, a mission critical facility and we can't take those kinds of risks, maybe it makes sense for the version 2 or version 3, but not coming from a point where we're just not going to, ever change or accept the change. It's just not realistic. We need to be taking advantage of things where they exist. And it's going to take some time to understand what the best choices are. So we're going to need to look around in the industry and look at different sources and try to understand, what makes sense and what doesn't.
Yeah. One more comment here. And so I've both manufacturing and building systems and engineering. So I get what you're saying. And for me, and I don't know about you, Adam, but there seems to be like a tension between sales and marketing and engineering. So you get sales and marketing, right? And this is what happens, right? Right? So brand X comes out with a new feature, right? Starts to take the world by storm because they got a great marketing budget. And then brand Y goes to their next sales meeting and says, well, brand X has this feature. We need to put it in our system, but that's not good enough. We have to up them, right? So we have to have another. So you get this feature creep going on, right? And it's the feature creeps that oftentimes end up, causing a bunch of grief for guys like me that were in the field, dealing with day-to-day building stuff. So I get that there has to be change. Sometimes I see change at the expense of the owners, and I struggle with that for sure. So I don't know you, Adam, but
it's an arms race, right? So it's tough to throw some sympathy their way. It's tough being Johnson's, Honeywell, Danfoss, or Siemens, right? Because there's an arms race going on in terms of technology, right? Yet you've got to keep all your legacy customers on board. Then you've got to deal with the skills issues that come with that, right? So one of the ways, and you might have asked your question before, the answer would have been, I'm the guy who can fix all your shit. Hire me. Give me $200,000 a year. I'm your boy.
Yeah, I'm your guy.
Right?
I'm your guy. Absolutely.
Right?
Sure.
Right. So,
job security, right?
So speaking as a property developer, my frustration and property developers' frustrations with these big houses is they're so proprietary and it's a lock-in, right? So all property developers at heart are like Prince Joffrey from Game of Thrones, right? Kill everyone, I rule. That's just how they are, right? Donald Trump, perfect example, right? His negotiating tactic is punch you in the face first before we even talk about anything, right? That's the property way, right? So,
boom, what'd you say your name was?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I see him in action and I see things I've been looking at for the last 38 years, but to people outside our business, this is not normal, right?
Right.
So it is hard being them, right? So the proprietary nature is the big thing that developers and people procure large buildings right against, right? Because you're locked in. If a spec would say, give me a system, right? And then it could be Honeywell, Johnson's or whatever. And then someone's going to come in. But then as the owner of, if I'm a university and I'm with that building for 30 years, I'm with Honeywell for 30 years. It's almost like getting married, right? Mm-hmm. And then, I need a new 3-way valve. That'll be $10,000, sir. and Fairies will come and fit it for you in gold shoes. And if you don't like it, you can go and F yourself, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's the problem. So one of the ways the UK deal with this is they have what's called systems houses. They try and break. You have these independent controls firms who sell multitude of systems, and then they have the role. But in North America, because of the scale of the country and the market, that hasn't really happened. And the market today is moving towards consolidation and big firms. You can see this in A&E firms. You see this in construction firms. The risks are so goddamn big now, right? So I think the days of small firms are going. Now, Johnson's, let's get off the Johnson's train, but one more thing to say on that. Johnson's are interesting, right? Because they are perpetually reinventing themselves. And I see them at the moment vertically integrating. They're buying commissioning firms, they're buying engineering firms, they're buying software firms, and they're vertically integrating their offering, right? They're turning themselves into a Jones Lang or a CBRE, where they're going to say to, I don't know, Harvard or a big property developer, we can do everything for you in that building. We can design it, maintain it, build it, run it, analyze it, retrofit it, everything, right? So Johnson's are interesting. And I think what Johnson's are doing is what everyone's going to do. They're all going to vertically integrate. You're going to wind up with these massive firms. Now, to work in these massive firms is another thing, right? If you're entrepreneurial or you want to be very customer focused, it's very hard to work in a big firm like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us why you left the very secure and warm environment of Johnson's, right? Which must have been just like getting milk every time you wanted it, right? Just hit the bottle, out it comes. And then you put everything on the line and started a new firm. So for me, if you're starting a new firm, you're solving a problem that needs to be solved, or there's an itch that needs to be scratched, or there's a client who's begging you to do something. How did that all happen?
I mean, at a basic I don't know if primal is the right word, but at a basic level, like I've always had a desire to kind of do my own thing. Right. So the whole cog in the big machine idea, it was great to learn the industry and to be exposed to different things, but you don't have a lot of control over your own destiny. You don't have, you're not taking any equity in the time you're investing. So I've always just had an innate desire to go out and sort of create something and build something on my own. Whether that opportunity was always there or not is a question. In the last few years, I kind of saw a need, and I had the ability and the skills and just the timing and everything lined up to a large extent for me to go out and actually start BlueRithm. So, I was at a point in my life, in my career, where that was possible. So it's just, you could say one of those situations where the stars had to align a little bit, but at a certain point you do have to step off the gravy train, so to speak, and just take a chance and make things happen.
So were you working in commissioning at Johnson's? Is that where the link came from?
I wasn't working as a commissioning agent per se myself, but I was doing a lot of, like I said, mission critical projects where there was a large commissioning effort as part of the project. And because we were one of the good locations, let's say, we did a good job. We worked hand in hand with the commissioning firms and the rest of the contracting team. So I spent a lot of time during the commissioning phase of a project, understanding it and just working alongside of those folks rather than, outside of the process or, some other way.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the problem with commissioning is it's very hard to commoditize. It's not hard to commoditize. It's hard to, everyone talks about the commissioning process, and I've just written a blog called Process is a Prophylactic. It's just a condom, right? It just means, I'll tell you who says, I followed the process. Everybody who got to the end of a process and didn't get the result they wanted, right? That's the first words out of their mouth, but I followed the process.
Sure.
Right? So life's about outcomes, not process. So you always, and this is one of my beasts with ASHRAE, right? The definition of commissioning in ASHRAE is it's a quality-focused process, blah, blah, blah. It's way too long, right? I fall asleep halfway through saying it. But the point is this, it doesn't talk about an outcome. It talks about, well, if you do all this, then surely everything's good, right? Whoopie-doo. And it's not like that. So commissioning is hard to fit into a process because every building is designed differently. All systems are different. It looks the same, but deep down it's different, right? Different equipment, different systems, different tests to be done. So putting that into a process is hard. And one of the problems with commissioning is it's very paper intensive, right? So you go to a building, there's all these different things. You have to write these functional performance tests. You have to document it. You have to document what you witness and test. So you wind up with this blizzard of paper, right? And you wind up with a lot of double and triple handling. And if then people pass through the job and it gets handed off to everyone, it's like a game of musical chairs, a poor guy holding all that stuff at the end going, what happened? But I followed the process. So anyway, this is why I'm a lunatic and not employable. But the point is this. I think commissioning software is hard to do because you're trying to be everything to every man, right? And every job and every system and every piece of equipment. So you wind up with a library or trying to produce a library, I guess, right? So you've been working at Johnson's. You've seen the chaos that is commissioning, right? You've seen people following the process, air marks. But how does software help there?
It can help in a lot of ways. So like you said, the process is just so documentation heavy that you can almost get lost in just the paperwork alone. So if you're able to automate as much of that as possible, you can focus more on the things that really matter, which is the actual substance of the effort. You're working with the design team, you're working with the owner, you're the bridge between the design and the actual implementation, and then you're going through the testing process, and you're actually focusing on doing a quality job with the testing process, and you're working with the contractors, and you're able to make it a collaborative effort. So the commissioning software can essentially digitize all of that documentation, bring it all into a centralized place where everybody's got access to it. We don't have to worry about things like who's got the latest version of some spreadsheet or some checklist or some other document, who's got the latest issues log. It's always there, that where everybody can see it at any point in time. As soon as somebody makes an update, everybody else can see that update. And then as far as the commissioning firms themselves, when you get to the end of that process, somebody has to compile all of this documentation and make a report. And maybe not even just at the end, maybe every month or some period throughout the project. So a big part of it is also automating that report generation process, where you can set up a report, click a few buttons, and have it actually build something that you can then turn over to the project team and your clients.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you have any... So basically, one of the missions is to reduce paperwork flow, right? And duplication of paperwork, I guess.
That's definitely a big part, yep.
Have you had any feedback from clients on how that's going?
Yeah, I mean, our customers have a lot of success in cutting down on the amount of time that they're spending on these administrative tasks. The report building tools are huge for them when they're needing to generate progress reports on some periodic basis, or especially at the end when it comes to the final report, and cut out a huge amount of time that just goes into sifting through emails and file folders and different versions of forms and pictures and file attachments and trying to pull all this stuff together into one place. You don't have to do that when you're using a commissioning software platform, because it's all already there, and the software can automatically go and grab all that stuff for you and put it together.
So when you say it automatically or grabs all that stuff and puts that together, so again, I'm putting on my building owner hat. Mm-hmm. Let's just say I've got brand X control systems in my buildings. How do you interface with my existing control platform? Tell us about that.
The interface to the control systems isn't something that the commissioning software or the process management software systems really have in place right now. There are commissioning platforms that do some of that interface, but those are generally referred to more as the continuous commissioning software. And that's solving a bit of a different problem than what we're doing. So we're focused more on the process of the commissioning itself, rather than the continuous monitoring or the continuous commissioning, where we're actually extracting data, so to speak, from the control system.
All right. So if I've got flow sensors, pressure sensors, BTU meters, variable speed drives, power management systems, you're pulling that information into your software, or tell us? No. Okay.
That's not the problem we're focused on.
All right.
At this point. So we're working more towards the automation of the process of commissioning, starting from the design phase, where the commissioning firm gets involved. They're helping to guide the design process, developing the OPR, and we're documenting all this along the way.
So it's a bit like a document management system, but it's not that, right? It's that, and the fact that it's aimed specifically at reducing time and paperwork on the commissioning process, for want of a better word. I've got to get a better word than that. I hate that word. But yes, everyone uses it, so you got to use it, right? Because if you can minimize double and triple handling, get the paperwork down to a minimum, what do? You focus on the engineering, right? Which is really what commissioning is about. So this is what I say. Commissioning isn't a process. It's about outcomes. Process is a journey, right? And if you do all the steps in the right order, you should get an outcome, but it's not guaranteed, right? So the thing to do is automate the process and optimize it as much as possible. And the perfect example of that is an F1 Formula Racing car tire change. 1.63 seconds, they can change 4 tires and get that guy back out on the road, right?
That's right.
So that is the ultimate expression of process management. They have refined to the point where that in, out, gone, right? Everyone knows what they're doing. Now, I'm not saying ductwork installation or building service installation should be like that, but for God's sake, it hasn't really moved on in 100 years, right? How hard is it to sort of get the installation process automated, get the testing process automated, get the paperwork process automated? I mean, the construction industry is so resistant to development like that, right? I just don't understand why. I think I've come down to the conclusion, it's just there's so much entrenched. Do what you've always done, get what you've always got. Everyone's happy with that. Everyone's in a circle jerk, right?
Yeah, it is. It has been a problem. I think it's going to change, and once it starts to change, then it's going to go. Because as soon as one big player in the industry starts doing it, and they're able to figure out what works, they're going to be that much more competitive, and everybody else is going to have to do it. So we're seeing it slowly start to change. People are bringing a lot of the process and other tools in different stages of the construction project into cloud-based tools and stuff. And it is happening, but you're right. It's incredibly slow compared to almost every other industry out there.
Yeah.
Well, that's the construction business as a general rule. It's so antiquated, right? And so stuck in its status quo ways that, it's incredibly frustrating at times. Before we go on, I have a question for Adam. How many seconds to change those tires? 1.6?
1.6.
When you were a rebel over in England, when you were out stealing 4 tires off a car at night, how many seconds did it take you?
A lot longer than that. And I had to find the bricks to put the car up on.
Sorry, I digress. A little sidebar question there.
Yeah, I have a past, it's fair to say. But the lack of process is the lack of refinement on things. So I think Andy's onto something, because what you're going to wind up with, the market at the moment, you're getting these entrepreneurial firms like BlueRithm coming up who are solving these like problems, but they're sort of they're in the bucket, and then there's someone doing like the continuous commissioning software. You're right. At some point in the future, be it 5, 10, 15 years from now, someone's going to come along and stitch all that together and provide this sort of like end-to-end solution in terms of software, and in terms of engineering and manufacturing process management. Because let's face it, a building is a manufactured product, right? So why can't it be automated or prefabricated? So there's a bit of a movement going on in the States at the moment towards prefabrication, right? It's mostly out on the West Coast, and it's mostly aimed at residential at the moment, but even Amazon is starting to get in on this thing. And I think it'll be people like Amazon who are going to come in. You're going to get these firms who are going to like prefabricate homes and small offices. Amazon are going to put their technology in it. You can go, hey, who's not Siri, is it? I don't know who Amazon use. Hey, Jeff, stop doing dick pics. Turn the kettle on, But, that's that confluence of technology meeting prefabrication, meeting software solutions. That's where the industry is going to change.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. And as somebody who's kind of in the trenches in the software development and design world right now, I can say that the way you described stitching the different solutions together is exactly the way things are moving. So rather than having, a big company that does kind of like the way Microsoft used to work, where you have one big monolithic system that tries to do, everything that a firm or a process or a project might need, you're going to have best in class, smaller, specialized solutions that you're able to easily stitch together because of open web, open standard protocols where these systems can easily talk to each other. So that's really the way that the industry is moving, and that's the way we're positioning ourselves. And we're going to open up BlueRithm and allow it to talk to Procore and Bluebeam and Uforma and all these other, and have all these partnerships and integrations in place where those things will be possible.
Actually, just to give a shout out to Bluebeam. I've used Bluebeam. I think it's really cool because it's my problem with Revit and Autodesk and BIM is you need to be freaking Merlin the Wizard to use it, right? Or you got to throw 5 years of your life at learning it.
Sure.
So, and it's super expensive, and it's that way for a reason, I guess. But my problem with that is, people go, "Oh, BIM's going to change everything." Only when the CEO and an apprentice can use it easily, and it costs $50 a month, right? not what it costs, right? So all you guys dream about this BIM solution. You're not. You're smoking the wrong weed. You really are.
Totally, you totally are. I just on echo on that one, Adam. Again, people don't, particularly people in the architectural engineering world, don't understand that the majority of buildings in North America are under 20,000 square feet.
Yes.
They can't even afford to hire professionals. You never mind about hiring architectural or engineering firms to use BIM tools. Like that just isn't going to happen. So the market for that software is very limited. And there's definitely demand for it. But the reality is the day-to-day grunt construction on this continent is small buildings. It's not big stuff.
Yep.
And the BIM world, until it gets down to a low-cost, simple solution that every, computer jockey that with an engineering degree can use it ain't going to happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And this is, again, going back to the BlueRithm model, which is like the small software house that could, right? You're solving a problem, and that you look at another problem, you solve that, you stitch it on, you solve that, stitch it on, right? So it's like Saeed Alaba was saying when he was on the podcast, change actually in the environment and sustainability and in the construction industry is coming up from the bottom. It's not coming down from the top, right? And that change is coming up from the bottom in the form of innovation. For software is the classic example of that, right? And the tying together of software and physical solutions, that's where the leap to hyperspace is going to be made when it happens, right? So on software solutions, and this is one of the frustrations I've had with a software business in the past, I think it's awesome. I can use it. I'm awesome, obviously. And then you go on site and...
Adam's on a roll today. Circle jerks and what else was it? Oh, yeah, stealing car tires.
I apologize. But you go on site and then there's a 35-year-old steam fitter there who thinks the fax machine is cutting-edge technology. What do you do with that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenge. And it really comes down to just making it really simple for folks. I mean, that's what we've found. You got to get it down to the point where you can teach people to do 2 or 3 different steps. And then that's all they got to do. So if we're digitizing checklists that we're expecting contractors to fill out, it's got to be, easier than filling it out on paper almost, where you can tell them step 1, step 2, step 3, and that's it. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to sit through a class and learn this all day. You just get on and it's very straightforward. And once you get beyond that, expecting, mass adoption from the entire construction team, it gets a little unrealistic.
Yeah, Adam, I mean, but you bring up a good point, and you've answered it to some degree. Adam and I met at a course, and we were talking about valve authority, Robert Petitjean, right? So on one hand, so your comment about, the guys on the job site that aren't the technical, aren't the savvy guys is one thing. But we still have an entire industry that still can't get their head around selecting valves properly. You can throw all the software that you want on it, but there's still fundamental things that need to go into a building that still people can't get their head around. And that includes enclosure design. So, I mean, we're talking about mechanical, electrical systems, but still we have even problems with building enclosures, right?
To your point, I mean, take valve authority and sizing it, right? So you go to Johnson's controller, say 2-inch pipe, 2-inch control valve, right? Boom, done. That, by the way, everyone listening, that is the engineering standard today everywhere in the world.
Yeah, and that's how we know it's wrong.
And that's how I know it's wrong. Yeah,
exactly. And if you go to a job site and you see a balancing valve or a control valve is the same size as the line size, someone has not done the math.
Oh, when I see that, my nose goes up. I smell a problem, right?
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment. If you're enjoying this podcast, we need your help. We're not asking for money, just a minute of your time. Our goal is to make the Edifice Complex podcast as relevant, educational, and useful as possible. By having good ratings, we can reach the widest audience. Therefore, our request is 2 small things. If you haven't already, leave us a review and rating on iTunes. And subscribe to the Edifice Complex on YouTube, even if you normally only listen to the audio version. These 2 things will help us immensely. Also, if you would like Robert or Adam to speak, teach, or consult on your project or business, please email admin@edificecomplexpodcast.com. Thanks for your time, and now back to the show.
See, I think the future is, and this is probably the space you're in, but you're not, sort of don't realize it is combining the software, like commissioning software, with some tools and educational tools with it, right? So when you're coming up to dealing with valves and hydronic systems, there's a tool, there's a module that says, these are the formulas, what size have you got, you plug it in. So for instance, if I was filling in a checklist, is there a 2-inch control valve there? Yes. What would be the valve authority on that with that pipe? If you had a bit of information, you could, with a couple of clicks, do a rule of thumb authority check there, right?
Sure.
That would be a great commissioning tool, because the value in commissioning is finding things early, right? Commissioning, I always tell people, commissioning starts in design phase. And what I mean by that, we don't all sit around and have great meetings. You're looking at the drawings, and the game is, how many problems can I find now that I can fix for 0, than finding them in construction where I have to start writing physical instructions and paying money, right? So a commissioning software tool and the evolution of that, I think, is it handles the paperwork, and then it evolves into having modules with it that can provide rule of thumb checks, like for duct size, fan size, authority, on valves, valve size, and like if I was reviewing a hydronic system, I could just, with a button, pull up some pipe sizing charts, right? And just do a spot check on a size. I mean, just, again, the amount of times I see incorrect pipe sizing blows my goddamn mind. How hard can that be?
Yeah. Well, and it's the same, but Adam, Andy, so we're giving you some ideas here, right? So, right. So there's, if I'm buying into the software tool, it's a commissioning software tool, and I can use it on the upfront part of the design process. One of the things that, like, again, going back to pipe sizing, but it can also have, let's say on a coil, on an air handler, right? You click on the coil on a module that says, have you considered, the ramifications of a larger delta T and the reduced temperature back to the boiler and the increased efficiency? Just a simple question, getting people to optimize their designs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, most engineers, they go to the handbooks and it's like, okay, 20 degree delta T, and then that's the coil from the manufacturer. And so it goes in, right? And they lose an opportunity to optimize the efficiency of the boiler, or in this case, if you want a higher delta T, a chiller, right? So that one question, getting them to think about optimization on coil sizing, right? And then so if that gets considered, they change the delta T, goes into the process, the commissioning process. You can validate it, right? Supply return, right?
That's right. Because I like the Ronald Reagan saying, trust but verify. This should be the commissioning definition. 3 words: trust but verify. Totally. I trust the design and construction team to do their job, but I'm going to verify that. Thank you very much. Right. Yeah. And if you're wrong, I have lawyers. Right. And I have sharp teeth. And that's, why does commissioning exist? There's no commissioning engineers for cars or laptops. There's a good reason for that. Them things actually work properly. Right? Yeah. So going back to the software, this is, again, one of my pet peeves. People confuse lots of paperwork during commissioning for actual commissioning, right? So one of the beauties of software is it takes that illusion away and it takes that burden away, right? So one of the great things about commissioning software is you reduce paper handling, you reduce paper volume, you streamline and fast track a nuisance job, which is producing paperwork, and it lets you focus on what's important, the engineering and testing, right? And that's really, I think, the killer unique selling point, if you want, right? Is it removes the burden of paperwork and producing stuff, reports, so they get automatically generated. People can log in and see what they want to see. And there's probably only 2 or 3 people on any job who want to really see it. And then you can focus as a commissioning provider on doing the actual work. And, if I was selling your software, that's how I'd sell it, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge part of it, definitely. And then the ability to have everybody use it as a communication platform too. It also works towards that end as well. It cuts down on the amount of time we're sifting through emails and phone calls when we've got all of the history and the conversations saved right in the software.
So you have a punch list module with it as well?
Yep.
Yeah. So yes, I did a job. So back in the day, when I was a property developer, we used one of the early versions of software collaboration tools for the project. So it's called A-Sites at the time. I don't know what it evolved into. But what that meant was, so as property development manager, I had to say to the design and construction team, there is no paper here. If you issue an RFI, you have to do it online. If you respond to an RFI, you have to do it online. And everyone was like, oh, jolly good. So we had the training session. Everyone was hugging, convincing everyone we're geniuses. But I tell you, man, 4 months in, people hated that thing because if you did not respond in the 5-day time to an RFI, me as the development manager got an email saying, do you know Fred from ABC Architects hasn't cleared his RFIs? So the accountability, that visibility brought to that team was crazy. So it went from hugging at the beginning to hating it to when people realized it wasn't going away, they upped their game. So it brought a level of compliance in terms of timeliness and tidiness to the work that just wasn't there before.
Sure.
And that's the advantage of commissioning software. You get that. You get the visibility on commissioning issues. That's the powerful thing. On every job I do, the commissioning issues log that I insist on sending everyone from the president down. Right? And my view is, look, I'm not pointing fingers here. This is the issue. We need to decide how we're going to solve it, and then we're going to document how we solve it as a lesson learned, and everyone's going to move on, and it's not going to be a blame game, and we're not going to talk about money. But, just the fact that you put that out there, and people hate it, right? So visibility and transparency, man, that is the other key benefit of software, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also a big piece of it. Just the easy access, the centralization of all the information. Everybody can see it. There's no question about, who's got what left to do. It's all right there.
Yeah, that's cool.
I guess in terms of reducing parasitic costs on a project, you haven't got a bunch of engineers, high-priced engineers, chasing literature down, right? I mean, if it's all in the, right? I mean, that was one of the things that used to frustrate us in our engineering department is I would watch our guys have to do stuff. I'm paying them to do engineering work, right? But they're doing administrative stuff, right? Yeah. And if you can reduce the amount of administrative stuff that an engineer is doing, then in terms of profitability in the business, it goes up.
Yeah,
no one accounts for the parasitic loss of administrative costs, right?
That's right.
Right? Yeah. We're going to do it because we're good. You're a good client and we want to keep you. And, and our competitors, they do crappy work, but we're not going to do that. We're going to throw it in for free. I always love that one. Well, we're going to do it because we're knights in shining armor until the financial statements come out, right? And you start looking at hours on a job versus the profit that was accounted for at the beginning, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of truth to that.
It'd be interesting as, over a period of time, you probably need a 3 or 4 or 5 year period of this to accumulate some statistics on like time saved or, paper saved. How many trees have you literally saved from being cut down? That'd be a great infographic, but you need a body of knowledge behind that, right? You need time to curate that information, I guess.
Yeah, we definitely get a lot of that feedback, but it's somewhat subjective. At this point, people know that they're saving time, but they're not tracking it. And we haven't been doing any formal studies at this point, but it's definitely interesting to measure.
Okay, so look, we're coming up on 40 minutes here, so we try and keep them to an hour. We're going to wrap up in a minute. We have some rapid fire questions as well. We ask people. So you will be asked a few rapid fire questions. There are no right or wrong answers. And we will see where you sit on the leaderboard at the end. No, there's no ranking. Good. But before we wrap up, anything we'll put in the show notes, connections to your website, to your Twitter feed, just to say, for me as a commissioning practitioner, paperwork is an absolute nightmare. It is a waste of time. It's a burden. It's an overhead. And these are all things paperwork takes away from actual engineering work, which is what you're actually paid to do. So for God's sake, everyone, go to software route, optimize what you're doing, please. Yeah. Fax machines are no longer trendy, FYI. Okay, so Andrew, we're going to go on to some questions here. Right, rapid question. What advice would you give to a young engineer just graduating and coming into our business?
I would say to find something that you're interested in, that you've got some passion in, study that, learn it, gain some specialization, but also keep your mind open and eyes open to other areas around that. Look at the trends of the industry, try to chart out a path and something to follow early on.
Good advice.
Good advice, yeah.
In dealing with conflict, personality conflicts, project conflicts, how do you handle it? What would you recommend to a young engineer having to face his first war?
That's always intimidating going into your first project meeting with a bunch of crusty construction managers ready to yell down your throat. But I would say just keep a cool head and always work towards resolution. Keep the client's best interest in mind. That's what we're working towards. Even if somebody's being not working towards that end, or they're just trying to win an argument, keep that as your focus and you'll come out all right.
Yeah, I would add to that, be humble, because you will be humbled. There's no question about that.
Yeah, there is a message right there for any of the engineers that come out of school that have a chip on their shoulder, cocky, arrogant, maybe even a slight narcissistic, that you will be quickly put in your place if you bring that into a meeting. That's for sure.
Yeah. Wait till they go and tell a 300-pound pipe fitter that he's put the pipe in the wrong way around. See how that goes. Awesome. So I just had a thought while we were here, and this is a big question, so feel free to punt it. We might get you back on to talk about this. What about blockchain? in terms of how that might apply to construction. Have you any thoughts on that?
Honestly, I don't. It's an interesting topic to me, and it's somewhat from a political standpoint, but we don't need to get into that right now. I'm going to go ahead and punt on that for now, I guess.
That's fair enough. I'm actually personally very interested in how this might apply.
Sure.
Because I think there are some benefits, and I think software firms, it will probably be a niche software firm that makes the use case for it in our business, I think. Now I don't know, I'm still in my early thinking on it, but maybe commissioning could be the way. We have to talk about that offline maybe, but interesting. I don't blame you for punting that. That was a bit of an unfair question, but it just popped into my head, and because I'm a squirrel, I have to say what pops in my head.
Yeah, that's very interesting though. I hadn't thought about it in the context of construction before.
Yeah.
Well, we've had guests on in the past, and you can go back into for those that are listening, go back into the previous episodes and listen to those interviews. They're actually quite good, and I certainly opened my eyes to the application of the technology. I'm a bit of a cynic, as you can tell, when it comes to technology, but I had my eyes opened to blockchain and the Internet of Things and how that can actually. There's an actual role for it in the world of architecture and building systems, for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, man. So I think that's it. So thank you for coming on, and we will post this up, and we'll see if we can get people excited about commissioning software. That's awesome.
Excellent, guys. Well, I appreciate you having me. This has been a lot of fun. It's my first podcast interview, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, you didn't even break a sweat. For those that are online, we actually have a visual. He didn't even break a sweat. There was nothing. He handled it really cool. So,
like a pro. We'll put you like on Fox and Friends next.
Excellent. Well, thanks, guys.
All right. So, Adam, what did you think of that presentation or interview?
I thought that was great, actually.
Yeah.
The whole software thing fascinates me because I think the construction software industry is the Wild West at the moment. There's so many apps and opportunities to fix inefficiencies and niggly things. It's a great time to be a software developer in construction industry. 10 years from now, probably not, but right now it is. And, Andrew's doing what all good entrepreneurs are doing. They're seeing a problem and they're trying to fix it, right?
Yeah. He said a few things that I really like to hear out of someone that's getting started in that business, and that was to make sure that it's simple enough that the people that are using it can use it. To keep the frustration out of it, because I know that using software stuff can just drive you crazy, and so if it's intuitive, if it requires very little or no training, then maybe he's going to have a winner there, and of course we like winners on our podcast. We have nothing but winners on our podcast. So that's why we had him on, because we think he's a winner and we wish him well with it. I think he might have something there.
Yeah. I mean, I just going during an interview, all through my mind, I was thinking, he could add that on to this. He could do this module and that module, there's so many ways that he can develop that and iterate and add value, right? So, and that's what sells, right? Value sells.
I can imagine myself as, say, a lead engineer on a project where we've got the software on our hardware and we're using it as a guidance tool. The checklist, the handling all of the documentation, stuff that still might be available in hard copy that you can digitize it, get it into the building's catalog. I can see a lot of benefit in that and managing it all, and then ultimately then moving. And of course, you're working with it in parallel with your calculations, right? So, you're doing a load calculation, you're turning it into a flow rate, then you're looking at velocities and pressures, and then you're going to be doing head loss calculations, and you're going to pick a control valve, right? Well, all of that guidance can be in the commissioning software that he's developing. And then when you go pick that control valve and the motor, the actuator, and the whole input stuff, the I/O, his tool manages all of that. It's kind of, because, in the past when we didn't have these tools, trying to keep track of all that stuff was a huge, huge task. And the bigger the building, the more control points, the more complicated it got, the more data, the more information you had to manage, right?
Yep. This is the thing. We're in a great period of high technology at the moment, right? But with that comes complexity.
Yeah.
And the bandwidth of how much your brain can chew on at any time, there's a limit to that.
Yeah.
If you're an engineer in the 60s, the guy who designed my school, right? He selected the boiler. There was some single glazing windows. There was a light that went on and off. There was a radiator in the room. That was it. So you could be a building services engineer there and expect to be current, right?
Right.
Today's building services engineer has got to be a control specialist, a fire alarm specialist. He's got to understand lighting, fenestration, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. He's got to have an understanding of all that. And sorry guys. And you've got to be able to synthesize that and put that together, right? Because it's all very well understood, but you've got to understand how it works together, right? So the complexity factor is getting higher. Add on to that multiple software tools, right? So the market is crying out for simplification whilst not losing the high technology outcome or the high technology input, right?
Right.
That's the sweet spot. I mean, this is how Apple did it, right? You think about Apple. They took, do you remember the early days of DOS and Windows 3.1, right? I mean, it was just a goddamn nightmare to get anything working, right? Yeah. And then along comes Steve Jobs and makes it easy.
Yeah.
Apple were paid handsomely for that, right?
Yeah.
I've just gone back to a Surface Windows laptop because I'm working on some projects with SharePoint. My God, setting up Microsoft Outlook took me a day to get all my accounts on it and synced. It was like, so I'm an Apple fanboy straight up, but I just have to use Windows now and again, right? So I've committed to being dual language. But my God, just reminded me what a service Apple did to everyone by making it easy to set something up.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and that's going to be the challenge, I think, for all of these companies. And Andy, of course, is no different. And that is that making it easy to stitch together. You guys talked about stitching together software tools, and I liked his comment. Well, both of you guys are making it in terms of the comparison between one big monolithic software package, which is clunky and you make one mistake in it, or even from loading the software up, if you haven't got the right hardware, it just becomes it's a pain. But if the tool that he's creating can stitch together small, best class software that exists, I really like that philosophy.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how this space develops over the years. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, man. Well, I think that was a good one. I'm fascinated by software. I've got so many ideas firing in my head at the moment for software. It's crazy. I think I need to go and lie down.
I have one last comment, and you made it, and I always love listening to you because you come up with these great statements. And one of them had to do with the arms race. Yeah. The manufacturers in many industries, but particularly the world of building construction, are in an arms race. And through that, marketing and product development are given a mandate to grow revenues and profits, right? And so they push this stuff down into the industry, down the chain of command, and people end up with these products in their buildings. And it's a race to get products into buildings, right? Because once you get it into a building, then you have a pretty good chance of being able to service that building for the life of that building.
Yeah, I mean, the sales strategy for any big firm like Johnson's, Honeywell, Siemens, Danfoss is get in, right? Go in at cost or sub-cost, and you got them for 25 years. Yeah. But I think in this arms race, these companies lose sight of what it's like to be the person operating the building and having to keep up with this technology. And I think these big controls firms are like the Windows pre-Apple's dominance, right? Yeah. They're just lording it over everyone, and they're not thinking about the user experience. One of these firms is going to break ranks and look at it the other way. That would be a game changer. So if Honeywell, Johnson's, Siemens, or Danfoss want to hire Robert and I, we will help you with that because we have some experience of what it's like to deal with your products.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Okay, man. So that was a good one. I'll see you on the next one.
All right, Adam. Always a pleasure, man.
You've been listening to the Edifice Complex podcast with Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean. To access show notes for this episode, visit edificecomplexpodcast.com. Also, if you would like Robert or Adam to speak, teach, or consult on your project or business, please email admin@edificecomplexpodcast.com. See you next time.
Adam, it's time to thank some people who are on our side because we're on their side. You found a new tool, software, BlueRithm commissioning software.
Robert, I sure have. I think BlueRithm is what I've been looking for all these years. Building commissioning can be chaos at the best of times. Most projects I consult on really suffer from poor information management. It's 2019, yet the property and construction industry seems to be firmly stuck in the 20th century paperwork world. I think people mistake emails and PDFs and Microsoft files on their servers and all the different PCs as a digital solution. In reality, it's just unorganized chaos. Do you want to streamline your commissioning process and save time and money? Do you want to go paperless and increase efficiency? BlueRithm is a cloud-based software solution built specifically for building commissioning professionals. BlueRithm digitizes your custom forms and checklists, allows collaboration across project teams, and automates reporting, leaving you to focus on what matters. Their team help you onboard the test sheets you've developed over the years. You can even send it some in paper, and they will digitize that and put it in the BlueRithm system for you. In my opinion, BlueRithm pays for itself in time saved on paperwork on a single project. For a demo or to start a free trial, go to BlueRithm.com. That's where rhythm is spelled RITHM, like algorithm. BlueRithm.com. Tell them the Edifice Complex sent you there.